Welcome back to TrueNAS Tech Talk. Kris is back from the OpenZFS Summit with news about exciting developments in both the software and hardware world. TrueNAS 25.10 was released this week, and hey, we just noticed it's been a year of T3 episodes here. Stick around for discussions, controversy, and some viewer questions all ahead. Well, happy birthday to the T3 podcast, Kris. It's been 43 episodes. This is episode number 44. So we didn't quite get every week, but hey, we did have some vacations and some time off there. But we're over 3,600 subs. We're well over 100,000 views on there. So I'd just like to take a moment to say, hey, thanks everybody for, being with us, tuning in and watching as Kris and I have sort of grown and evolved this into our, regular part of our work week.
That's amazing. I mean, a lot of podcasts don't make it to 44. That's still a good number. I'm happy with that. Looking forward to another 44 over the next year, maybe a little higher. We'll see.
Exactly.
On how personal life intrudes.
Embracing the excitement and the controversies as they come along. But hey, speaking of reasons that you've been off, we were off last week, and that's because Kris was away at the OpenZFS conference. So hey, why don't you bring us some good news? What were you most excited about there? Like what are we talking about with upcoming exciting things?
A lot of good technical talk there. I mean, it's an OpenZFS conference, right? So you kind of expect that. First, for those who don't know, it was held in beautiful Portland, Oregon, which was crazy rainy, go figure, but like thunderstorm rainy, really bad rainy, not normal Portland drizzle, but it was fine. It was good. We enjoyed it. We were inside, of course. And the technical talks, let's get into that. So we hung out first couple days. We had a user summit, and then we had a developer summit. And I stayed for the first day of the developer summit and got all the really cool talks. And I guess, where do we start? So AnyRaid, we talked about that a few episodes back. So again, click through the history, go take a look if you want to hear kind of our discussion on that. And some of the videos are now up for the OpenZFS conference as well, if people want to go watch it and kind of catch it firsthand. But very much enjoyed the AnyRaid talk. It was a great technical overview on what's being worked on there for the next ZFS release. I can really see how this is going to be crazy popular for our home lab crowd, or frankly, anybody who just can't source a full set of identical drives and then expand it in complete Vdevs in the future. I mean, we understand a lot of people buy some of their first big rack mount systems are secondhand. Sometimes the drives are secondhand as well, which means you can't always get them all, in the same capacity you'd like. So AnyRaid's going to be very interesting for you. Again, maybe performance has a little bit of a delta there, but the flexibility you get of being able to mix and match and grow and shrink is going to be very cool. So we're looking forward to getting that out in the next major OpenZFS release, 2.5, 3.0. We also had an interesting talk from Seagate, came and gave a presentation about some of, their roadmap, what they see coming in the future. Some interesting talk about some fail in place capabilities, which is the drive basically being able to disable just a single head or platter and continue operation with the reduction in overall capacity. That got us thinking and talking internally about, what ZFS could do to make that effective. Actually, it was timely because that talk was right after the AnyRaid talk, which is a perfect use case for that kind of drive capability, right? Where you could say, okay, I lost a platter, I lost a few terabytes here. I'm going to shrink that drive and put it back in the pool and keep going. One of the things the presenter mentioned was, some of these drives will go another 3+ years. That's significant. That's not like you got yourself 3 weeks. Oh, no, 3 years is wow, that's great. By that time, you're getting a bigger drive to replace it with. So interesting capability.
It's kind of like NAND sparing on SSDs. Imagine, platter sparing.
Yeah,
Say,
absolutely.
hey, if I got 3 out of 4 platters going on an 8 terabyte drive, well, I still got 6 usable terabytes there. Might still want that.
And speaking of drive sizes, so of course we got to look ahead. I mean, drive sizes are going to continue getting bigger as we expect. I mean, we're already seeing it on the NVMe side. You can get 120 terabytes, 240s coming, half a petabyte's coming before too long. But for those still using spinners and planning to use spinners for the foreseeable future, which, is going to be a vast majority of people, 100 terabytes on the horizon. I mean, probably 4 or 5 years out, but wow, that's amazing. Storage is just going to keep getting better and better. I mean, it might be my 100 terabyte pool is just 2 drives. I have a mirror. Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. I have that in a mini now.
Exactly. And I've even seen some talk about people saying hey, we're going to do NVMe attached hard drives.
Yep. That's another thing they talked about is they want to get to eventually the utopia of having just one protocol to support and moving on from things like SATA and SAS, which is coming. That is the plan. So NVMe hard drives will be a thing. before too long. But additionally to the drive side, we had some good talks about OpenZFS and kind of future direction there. So it's not much of a secret, but we talked about OpenZFS 3.0. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, first of all, it's a big new number in the front. So it means we have an opportunity on the ZFS side to do some new exciting things. And are there things we should retire? Or are there new features we should bring in? If you're going to make, more significant breaking changes, this is kind of the time. I kind of led a little bit of a talk about my own 2 cents on something I think that should be an interesting priority for ZFS, which is getting ZFS a user space only option so that more distributions could ship it just out of box and sidestep kind of the kernel DKMS issues that, maybe make some distros very resistant to putting ZFS in, or just make it hard to adopt for end users because it's just inconvenient, right? Plus, there's some advantages of having a fully user space ZFS stack, being able to run different versions of ZFS on the same host, maybe containerized. All kinds of interesting things could potentially come out of that, in addition to testing and development can get a lot easier too. So yeah, that's an interesting idea. That got some traction, I think, with the group. So maybe we'll see that land in the 3.0 release here in the coming years.
Well, that sounds like it's going to be exciting times for TrueNAS, certainly, and for ZFS as a whole. So I'm glad you had a great time there. Maybe I'll try to get there next year coming and get involved in all the real technical things as well. So.
Yeah. And I should clarify, it's a summit, not a conference. So it's less of the booths and walking around and all that. And this is like a developers event. Like if you want to get technical and talk to the people who actually get in the trenches with ZFS code, this is the place to go. So if you couldn't make it this year, if you are a developer or want to be a ZFS developer, definitely put it on your calendar for the fall of next year. I assume it's going to be in the same place, similar time, but yeah, set some time aside.
Sounds great. So, hey, we got a little bit of exciting news there. We had the first game was streamed for Amazon Prime's NBA Studio. And one of the things maybe some people missed our announcement on it, but that is actually being powered significantly by the TrueNAS F series. That's our all NVMe HA platform. So we're going to leave a link to that article below from sportsvideo.org. But they are actually using multiple petabytes of the TrueNAS F series there. So we saw lots of really good positive feedback about the production quality of the Amazon Prime show and how all the replays were there. They had that fantastic interactive studio where they had the live overlays of people being highlighted, and he's standing there drawing on an iPad and it's putting it right up on a, like a 3D rendered model in front of him. It's pretty amazing.
That's really cool. That news came out Friday, I think right after the games, Friday night while I was out at the conference, and the article mentions, I think, a 7 petabyte TrueNAS is used for these mobile studios. I mean, you should go look at the article just to see the pictures alone, because it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a neat setup, but we were really tickled to see that they gave TrueNAS the shout out as being the thing that's powering that. So your NBA games going forward on Amazon Prime, flowing through a TrueNAS box. That's awesome.
Exactly. We got to get the rest of the sports there. Now, that's our next thing. Let's expand. We can do more than basketball. We already do some NFL, right. I understand. So, hey, let's get...
Well, your neck of the woods, we probably got to get some hockey games.
Get some hockey. Well, it's up here. Maybe baseball's got a little bit more interest these days. Let's see how Friday goes.
What's baseball? Sorry. Not a sports guy.
All right. Well, hey, speaking of other exciting things going on this week, it was the Goldeye release. So TrueNAS 25.10 officially reached its .0. It broke cover on Tuesday, and we had some very quick adoption on that. So in fact, it was bigger than the Fangtooth adoption in spring 25.04, and that in turn was bigger than Electric Eel's 25.10. So we're continuing to grow, month after month, year after year. So
seeing a trend here, Chris. That's weird. That's good. I mean, that's really heartening to see. And we on the TrueNAS development side really appreciate, the enthusiasm and the loyalty from our users who, keep deploying more and more TrueNAS out in the wild. That's awesome. It's exciting to see.
Yeah.
Maybe we got to do our own conference at some point. That'll be cool.
Yeah. TrueNAS user group would be interesting.
Sure.
But we've talked about it in some previous episodes. We'll, of course, leave some links up in the corner there and down in the description below. We're just skimming over some of the new features here real quick, Chris. I mean, we've got NVMe over Fabric support, which is really fantastic. As I mentioned before, I've been playing with that. We got NVMe over TCP in the Community Edition. We got NVMe over RDMA in the Enterprise one. We saw some really fantastic numbers out of some internal testing with that. I think we got 75 gigabytes a second of reads getting pushed out of a single appliance of ours. That was one of our all NVMe units. So it was just really, really screaming fast. We're excited to think of like all the new workloads and the, HPC and heavy duty compute that we can
Mhm.
feed with that kind of bandwidth on there. So that's
Yeah,
amazing.
no, it's very impressive. Like I said, it's the kind of thing most people and most enterprises don't even have that kind of networking infrastructure to take advantage of that. So it's nice to know TrueNAS and the storage side isn't going to be a bottleneck. A lot of times it's going to be on the networking and client side.
Exactly. We did a lot of tweaks in our virtual machines there. We got our disk import and export there. We turned on the enterprise availability for failover HA virtual machines. So you can say, you know, during a failover, you're going to bring your machine down on one side and bring it up on the other. We do have some secure boot support in there as well. We understand I did see somebody submitted a ticket already for secure boot in 25.10 saying, hey, my Windows 7 isn't quite acting the way I expected. So we're going to jump in there. We're going to have a look. I installed a Windows 11 VM here myself, and we're gonna poke at that one right away because we do want to make sure that secure boot is working for everybody, especially what with Microsoft having pulled the rug out from Windows 10 just recently as well.
Yeah. Yep. And then, of course, the update system. So I was on RC1, went to the new release. Oh, God, it's so much nicer to have all the notes and the release notes and the information right in the product UI. I don't have to open another web browser tab. This is great. So that was just, again, usability things, but those little touches just feel really good. So
exactly,
take a look at that when you get a chance. If you're coming from coming from a previous release, you won't see it until another dot update lands. But if you're coming from the RC, it's pretty slick.
Yeah, and we did see your notice from those of you who mentioned, you know, it's not mentioning a general train yet. As soon as we push 25.10 into that sort of general profile, that general train is going to show up, and you can migrate yourself over to there to say, you know, that's where I'd like to be.
At the current adoption rates, I assume that's going to be quick, like I said, but we'll keep an eye on it. It's only been a few days now. We could usually give it a little more time in the wild before we pull the trigger on that.
It's going to go pretty fast, certainly. We had, you know, the automatic pool migration in there for our apps. We enhanced the user interface, so we got the streamlined management there and the improved account information. We did a lot of under the hood fixes for performance stability there. We dug into those before, but I mean, we've got our fixes for snapshot replication. We've got direct IO support in ZFS, memory management improvements, lots and lots of good stuff in there.
I'll be curious to hear from our community users, Chris, who touch direct IO, who have played with that, if they have all flash systems, like what kind of benefits are you seeing? Again, we're testing these things in the lab and we see our things, but it's good to hear from other users who are also deploying it in their environments and just hearing how it changed their life or how it changed their world. What kind of difference did you notice?
We've seen the changes in our labs. We want to make sure that you're seeing the changes out in yours, or you're prod as well if you're one of those who are bold enough to run it right out of the gate in production.
Yep.
Yeah. So what do we want? There are a couple of things here that might be highlighted, and again, they're on the new update page as sort of some changes requiring action. The NVIDIA drivers, you know, we did switch to that open kernel module, so it requires the GSP in there, the GPU system processor, which does mean that, you know, Pascal, Maxwell, and Volta, the 10 series and older cards, they aren't supported out of the box. There is that community fix that can enable them as well with the module, but we'll dig into that one a little bit later, maybe. So there were some changes that we'll maybe go into here.
Yeah. One can hope maybe as a result of these new open source drivers that they change the policy. Maybe 10 years goes to 12 years of support or something. I don't know. Again, not really our call, but it'll be interesting to see if that can happen, if there's enough community demand and user demand on the NVIDIA side.
I certainly hope so. In this case, it was a result of that little bit of hardware, the GPU system processor that can sort of isolate the proprietary firmware blobs in there. So hopefully now that we're over this sort of hump of it, we can, you know, have those blobs still sit there, have it stick around for longer. And maybe they'll say, you know, GSP is still there in the 16 series, the 20 series. We don't need to drop those yet. Maybe they don't tune them quite as much, but hopefully they don't just pull out the rug on the support entirely.
Yeah, that would be ideal. We'll see.
But do we want to talk about the elephant in the room here, Chris? Do we want to talk about smart?
What? Yeah. No, obviously this has been the most controversial change, and we don't mind a little controversy here. We can deal with it. We got thick skin, but the biggest controversy so far, of course, was that the UI controls for smart were removed and moved to a backend implementation detail in Goldeye. Meaning we're working to make the storage do all of the obvious storage things in the background in due course, rather than requiring you as the administrator set up and configure it every time. Needless to say, this has proven somewhat controversial.
It was indeed. We definitely had a lot of immediate, we'll say, enthusiastic and spirited feedback on the announcement
love.
threads, on Reddit, on other places, saying, why did you take away the smart tests? Why aren't you guys monitoring smart? The reality is we are in fact monitoring smart, and it's happening in the background. But what's missing is, that pass fail binary smart test, and those smart tests are very far from perfect. The reality, I'm going to pop up some stats from an SSD that I personally own, use this as sort of a demonstration case. So this is a data center SSD here with, it's got 2,000 plus reallocated sectors already. It's got 2 that are pending outstanding, but the smart tests, both a short and a long, come back clean on this drive. And they say, oh, it's perfectly healthy. Everything is just fine. It would have shown up as passed in the old interface. But what sold it out to me and said, hey, you shouldn't trust this drive? It was ZFS. It was that the storage interface there saying, hey, this drive keeps throwing checksum errors back at you. This drive is now throwing read and write errors back at you. ZFS sold that drive out when Smart was telling me it was perfectly safe. So that's what made me go in there. That's what made me pull those stats. And you can still pull those stats manually from the CLI to say, here's what's actually going on with the drive. But
at the end of the day, though, we're still running Smart D. It's running in the background. It's still passively monitoring. We want to still look for things. And we will, of course, in the software, it's going to surface alerts. If there's an alert that seriously looks critical, absolutely, we're going to surface it. But I have the inverse example, Chris. I had for years drives when I had a whole bunch of disk rack mount systems that threw smart errors, and it freaking annoyed me because they were alarming all the time. Guess what? Those drives never died. They worked great. ZFS was happy on them. And then the drives which didn't have any smart errors were the ones that would fail, and go figure. So again, smart's not the be all end all. Now I realize if you're, on the poor man's file system and using EXT or something similar, and that's the only option you got, okay, that's all you got. But we got ZFS and smart in combo. And so we're trying to do things a little bit, I guess, more intelligently to not have you throw away perfectly good drives potentially, but also, surface when a drive is failing because ZFS is detecting that. That's when you really need to say, okay, it is time to yank this sucker out.
Exactly. Like storage is our living here. It is what we do. And, we use it here. We rely on this just as much as you guys do for not just, a line of business, but it's our personal data. I run TrueNAS at home. My personal files and, my cherished memories of family photos are on TrueNAS. So, give us a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here. We're not just taking a trust me bro approach to the health of your drives and the health of your data. We realize, things might not be perfect for some of you. And there's, like I said, there's some very enthusiastic feedback coming in. We're definitely taking it into consideration. And we want to make sure everybody is happy here.
Yeah, keep up the dialogue. Like I said, we'll definitely talk about it. But at the end of the day, we're trying to look at the data as well and do the best thing. Because again, it's a balance. You got to be cautious, but you also have to not be wasteful and be throwing away things or replacing things that legitimately could live out the rest of their life perfectly healthily. Like that seems kind of a shame.
Yeah. On the other side of it here, the challenge is with things being forced to be replaced. A lot of people said, "Hey, the NVIDIA change. Why did you guys do that? Because now you're forcing me to replace my perfectly good, I had a 1050 or a 1060 in there." The challenge is that when we are still kind of beholden to the upstream vendors, in this case, it was NVIDIA, they basically made that choice to say this open kernel module is going to be required for the new 50 series Blackwell GPUs. So unfortunately, we had to make a decision about what we had to support in the fresh out of the box scenario. If we defaulted to the existing closed module, then we're going to get people who are still upset and saying, hey, how come you've made such this great big deal about all this new hardware you're supporting in 25.10? You support 400 gig Ethernet, you support this RDMA technology, but you still don't support the 50 series GPUs for our, GPU accelerated compute workloads. So we get,
that's valid. We have to default to supporting the new hardware wherever possible. And again, we're talking 10-year-old hardware now. It's not like this is like a card you bought 3 years ago necessarily. Maybe you did, but you bought used.
You bought it secondhand. And some people said, hey, why don't you ship them both? Put both modules in there. So a little bit behind the scenes. So because of that systemd sys extension layering, that would mean, so for one, we're adding another, probably 500 megs or so to the ISO download size. a minor challenge for a modern broadband. Okay. But what it really means is now we have a necessity to test both the closed and the open module against a bunch of other workflows internally. Like it was 25.04, Chris, I think, where we wanted to introduce direct IO, but that piece that seemed to be completely unrelated to a GPU somehow was conflicting with certain components of that NVIDIA system extension. So
the overlay extensions,
we would have had to double the testing effort. And then if we chose to ship it, we'd have to put a caveat to say, oh, if you've got this module toggled in, you can't use direct IO, but if you have this one, then you can. Which, not only generates a lot of testing effort, but it puts a bunch more asterisks on your system's functionality and support. And it also exposes a rather ugly edge case where somebody might figure out to say, oh, I've got a 10 series in this slot, I've got a 50 series in this slot. Let me take the safeguards off. I want to run both sysextents at the same time. And then suddenly they're just in a boot loop of kernel panics where it's saying, what the heck did you do? Or maybe it's polite and just says, well, instead of running both GPUs, I'm running neither and you've broken something. So, we understand, again, not everybody can be happy with this choice, but it was kind of a choice that we were forced to make. We kind of got our hand pushed by upstream NVIDIA to say we had to make a decision. And we definitely applaud the creative efforts of our community to say, hey, here's a quick fix to turn off the open module, turn back on the proprietary one. So if you're not using a 50 series, you can absolutely do that. If you want your Quadro P series, you want your GTX 10 series back, you can absolutely do that. We're not going to stop that. It is an open core module. We encourage you to modify it, tweak it, and change it.
Yeah, like I said, if you need to get something that's outside of normal support for a variety of reasons, then that's absolutely one path you have. And at some point you'll say, I'm tired of doing this unsupported thing. I'll get up to modern hardware. That's fine too. Again, but you can make that choice. You have some options. Hey, we should probably mention, let's get into the MinIO thing real quick, because that was slightly controversial this last week.
Yeah, that's probably another controversy that thankfully wasn't directly our fault.
Here. This is great.
Let's keep digging in it. Let's we can go deeper. So MinIO, we talked about this one previously about how MinIO had changed their compiled binary shipping to now have a very closed source kind of license and removed a lot of functionality from their management console. What they've now done recently is they're no longer even shipping precompiled binaries for the open source release. So what that means is sort of the Docker container was left to hang out to dry to say, we're not going to compile this for you any longer. What are we going to do about this one, Chris? I mean, we've been exploring
that's very frustrating.
We've been exploring some S3 compatible alternatives on the back end already. But I guess what are we going to do with this one?
There's already several of them in the app catalog available for our home lab community. But of course, we're taking a look at this seriously to see what's going to happen. I mean, the community may fork MinIO. There could be another viable thing that comes out of it. It is very frustrating and disappointing to see, I guess, the community open source version get treated this way. But, we will, of course, adapt to it and take a look at it. At the end of the day, there will still be object store available on TrueNAS. The MinIOs that are out there and deployed and still being deployed work great, work fine. You can still absolutely do that. But in the meantime, again, disappointing decision, and one that we've already seen, again, a handful of new applications have showed up in the App Store to handle that. And it may be down the road that it's time to do something a little bit more bold on the TrueNAS side and have more of kind of an out-of-box S3 object store capability. So we're, of course, all things are on the table. We're taking a look, but we're going to let the dust settle a little bit first, see what happens. This is obviously a bigger issue than just for TrueNAS. Seeing MinIO do this, there's a lot of other folks who've depended on that for a long time. So we will, of course, see what we need to do to adapt and keep object storage humming along.
Well, Chris, we got time for a couple of viewer questions here. So let's take a few from YouTube and one from the email here as well. So we got Truth D2E says, what's the biggest TrueNAS deployment you've heard of or worked on? What's the biggest one we've worked on, Chris?
I guess it's how you define biggest, right? I mean, there's lots of systems, and we've seen some wild ones where there's hundreds or even 1,000 plus systems, which is crazy. Those are some large deployments, and of course, different system sizes and configs and all that good stuff. But then, single system, I think, is maybe what the user's asking here. So probably the biggest one we've personally laid hands on here and have touched is a 20 petabyte plus deployment. We're talking like 1,200 plus disks attached to a single head. That's pretty wild, and that presented some interesting and unique scaling challenges with that many drives, being able to boot up, enumerate them all, import the pool, the middleware be able to you do things to make the UI responsive when you're trying to build a pool with that many of this. That was interesting, but that's a thing, and it totally works and is supportable, and ZFS works great, and the performance is pretty good. It's like, okay, it's amazing you can do that. Now, granted, that's pretty rare. I don't know. I'd be curious if anyone else has done like 1,500 drives or 2,000 drives on the TrueNAS system. Drop a comment in the notes if you have. I want to hear from you. That sounds wild.
Yeah, community notes, definitely. I want to hear about biggest capacity and biggest number of spindles or bays going on. Definitely want to hear that one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so next up, Emerald 13. Could you cover in what scenario it's possible to detach or lose a metadata VDEV without any data loss? My understanding from the forums is that it's possible to detach a special VDEV from a mirrored data pool, but I would love your thoughts.
Oh, so you have two questions in there. You said detach or lose. So very different scenarios. You can detach a metadata VDEV from a mirrored data pool. You can they are subject to the same rules as any other VDEV removal, which is everything has to be mirrors or stripes, one-way mirrors. As soon as you have a RAID Z VDEV, so if your data VDEVs are RAID Z and your special is mirrored, you can't detach that special. So everything has to be mirrors. At that point, you can do a controlled detach. You can get rid of that metadata VDEV. It will push that metadata back to a permanent home on your regular pool, your spinning disks, if that happens to be the case, and you're good to go. Losing a metadata VDEV, like suddenly both SSDs disappear, or if you were in the unfortunate scenario of you only used one SSD and it dies on you, don't do that, because the loss of a metadata VDEV is pretty fatal to your pool. Metadata is what is basically the index. That's the that's the library finder cards of the old days of where is your data located on the pool itself. If you don't have that metadata, you're missing your block pointers, you're missing your checksums, you're missing all those crucial things, and you basically just have a complete jumble of bits on your spinning disk with no real indication of where a record starts and where it finishes. So you can never lose a metadata VDEV without data loss. You can detach them in certain scenarios, but you never, ever want to lose it. So there you go.
Okay.
All right. Let's go on to the next question. So it's from DFG. I don't know if we pronounced the underscore or not, but it's there. Recently installed, he says, I love all the improvements since launch when I last tested, but I do feel like a bit of a dope when it comes to permissions. Is there any chance of a wizard that combines a dataset, user, and SMB or NFS shares together so that it just works? I had to wait an hour every time I made a big permission change to recurse over my existing data every time I made a mistake. Thanks.
Ouch.
So yeah, that can be painful on spinning disks for recursive permission changes. So what do we think,
if
Chris?
you loaded a lot of data up on it?
Yeah. Do we have a chance of this for like a that one button wizard? And maybe I'm dating myself, but I swear that back in the FreeNAS 8 or 9 days, we had kind of an initial setup wizard that you could kind of click through, but
so
unless you fit into that use case, it's challenging.
We've done little bits and pieces of this. So if you went ahead and grabbed the new Goldeye release, you'll notice even the shares page has been cleaned up a bit since Fangtooth. The users page got a bit of an overhaul, so it makes it easier to say this user for SMB, whatever. That's all good. But I think at the end of the day, where we're heading with kind of this UX journey of just making things easier and more painless to set up initially, will be some sort of, hey, I just want to go through that initial wizard, get me my SMB share, here's my user, go. Like, that is the plan, is to make that as just seamless as possible so that there's less opportunity for foot shooting. Now, granted, I can already hear the complaints from the advanced users, don't take away my advanced settings and permissions. Well, of course not. We have to be able to accommodate that too. But at the same time, there's a little bit of a learning curve. And if you get it wrong, as this user did in this case, it can be a little bit more painful to go and kind of undo and set the permissions right later on after the fact. So all that to say, that's an area we're constantly looking at how we can improve and make it better, but it's going to be small incremental changes. You'll see some land again in Half Moon this upcoming release next spring, and then some in Icefish in the fall. But yeah, I hope you'll like the set of changes that are already planned and coming. Okay. And last up, we got one from email this time from Ian, who says, hey, what's the current status of Secure Boot? I attempted to use Secure Boot. However, the default keys in UEFI won't authenticate against the TrueNAS 25.10 RC1 ISO.
Yeah, this one now, we did put some Secure Boot in the VMs, certainly, but the TrueNAS ISO, the TrueNAS operating system itself, it is not quite Secure Boot ready yet.
Yeah.
We had hoped, we had targeted that for 25.10, but this one did kind of slip a bit, didn't it, Chris?
It did. Stuff happens. Sometimes you get into development and hit certain challenges. This one's coming along, but the one thing that's very particular about Secure Boot is there's no go back. You kind of have to get it right and keep it right forever going forward so you can do updates and all that good stuff. So we are taking our time on this feature. We're going to do it right. Again, there's no real tolerance for mistakes when it comes to this. Things have to be signed properly. That has to all be validated, all the upgrade scenarios validated, all that good stuff. So we'll do it right. It'll release when it's ready and not before then. That's one of those things where, again, there's no real go back.
Exactly. Well, that was great to answer some viewer questions. It's a good episode there. Lots of, like we said, discussion, controversy. Please absolutely keep the discussion going, whether it's on Reddit, on our forums, or on any other kind of social media. Please, if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Ring that notification bell so you get notified when we're back online. Give us a like on this video. Hey, we're, like we said, it's been a year. Chris and I have really enjoyed doing it, and hopefully we can keep it going for another year afterwards. Please continue sending those questions in. Drop them in the comment section below. Drop an email to t3@truenas.com. We'll do our best to get through them, even if we can't respond right away. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully we'll see you next week and throughout the next year. See you next time.